Chapter 5. "This isn't working out," Michelle said quietly. "What?" Sue asked. She had just been sitting on the sofa mindlessly watching television. Michelle was sitting behind her at the dining table stirring her Earl Grey tea, listening to the spoon clink against the mug. She was staring at the back of Sue's head, as if she would be able to read anything from her ponytail. Sue used the remote to turn off the set, and she turned around to look at her. Michelle stared down at her swirling tea with obviously sad eyes. "It's not working," she repeated. Sue knew what she was talking about. She sighed and got up and joined her at the table. She pulled out the opposite chair and sat down across from Michelle. She placed her hands on the placemat and interlaced her fingers. She stared at her hands and said, "I know." She glanced up at Michelle, who was still staring down at her mug. She looked back down at her own hands. "I'm sorry, I'm not dealing very well. I noticed. I'm here to help, but you won't let me or just don't want me to. It's not that. Everything just sucks. There's not one single positive thing about life right now. I thought I was that thing, maybe." "Oh, you are. You know what I mean." "Yeah, I do." Sue reached across the table to try to touch her arm reassuringly, but Michelle leaned back out of reach. "Sue, I don't know why I'm here. I might as well be on the other side of the planet as close as I feel to you right now. You're here because I... You can't say it. You never could." She leaned back in and made direct eye contact with Sue. "I love you," she said simply. "Do you love me?" Sue was then the one to lean back, and she looked down at the floor. "You know how I feel about that. That's not fair." She looked back into Michelle's eyes. "You know I care about you. You know that." "No, I really don't. Look, I know you've got your hang-ups. I know your parents always said they loved you no matter how shitty they were to you, so I know how you are about that. I guess I just thought you wouldn't let yourself say it. I didn't know that you would never let yourself feel it." Sue winced. "They're assholes, so fine, don't love them, but don't make me feel like I have to prove a mountain's worth of..." Michelle threw up her hands. "Of what real love is because of their mistakes. That's what's not fair." Sue's posture went limp. "You're right," she said. "I know. I've never been so upset about being right before. I hate saying all this, but I'm tired of feeling like I'm in the way. I obviously don't make you feel any better no matter what I do. I can force like hell the tiniest smile, and that's it. You make me feel worthless." "I'm sorry, okay?" Sue snapped angrily. "I'm just going through a bad time. Can't you just let me go through this? You want to help? How about a little patience? That would help." "I've been nothing but patient, but you're so selfish you haven't even noticed. I've been going through everything right along beside you, remember? I was there for all of it, but you don't care. You've known Rob longer. I'm the outsider, so my feelings don't really count. All I've been doing is catering to you, but you've never asked me how I was doing. Well, guess what? I haven't exactly been in top shape lately myself. You know how I make it look easy? Because I have you. Or at least I thought I did. Being with you makes everything okay, but if I don't do any of that for you, then I ask you again, what am I doing here?" Sue did not respond. Her face was blank and tired, so Michelle went on. "What, do I just mean you can make your rent? I don't need this place, but is that why you have me here?" Sue's face changed. It filled with anger and color. She looked at Michelle. "Fuck you," she said both words slowly and deliberately. Michelle stood up. "No, fuck you, Sue. You don't get to make me feel like shit. You don't get to put me so far down on your list of priorities that I'm in the fine print and then try to make me feel bad about it. So fuck you, Sue. Fuck you." Michelle grabbed her purse and the light jacket she always took with her, in case the weather changed at night, or if she went somewhere with an overcranked air conditioner, and she stormed out the door, slamming it behind her. Sue sat motionless, unblinking. Finally, she sighed deeply and brushed her bangs back out of her face with her fingers. She got up and went back to her spot on the sofa. She picked the remote back up off the coffee table and turned the television back on. She didn't even look at it. She rested her left elbow on her left knee and rested her face in her hand. It covered her mouth and the tip of her nose, and she stared down at the fuzzy carpet. She didn't know how long she sat that way. She may have sat like that until it was time for her to go to work in a few hours, if the telephone had not rung. Sue finally answered the phone on the 5th ring. She would set the answering machine to get it earlier next time. "Hello?" she breathed. There was no answer, just the sound of what may have been traffic. "Hello?" she said again, annoyed. "Sue?" a voice clicked in. "Yeah?" she answered slowly. It sounded like him, but she didn't think it was. "Sue, it's me, Rob," he said loudly over the cars, ripping the air as they sped past him. The volume of the connection kept drastically rising and falling. She felt a fresh release of adrenaline go through her system. Words were overflowing up her throat, but they got clogged before they could come out of her mouth. "Sue, you there?" he shouted. "Yes," she answered loudly so he could hear. She was trying to sound calm. "I'm here." "Sue, you've got to get out of there." He He hoped like hell that his voice wasn't breaking up the way hers was. "What? Rob, what's going on? Where are you? Are you okay?" He was able to make out all of what she said. "I'm fine. I know it seems—" That was all she heard of that sentence. "Rob, are you still there?" "Yes, please trust me. You're the one in danger. Go anywhere. He can't find you if you even just go next door, but you can't be there. Leave! Now! Do you hear me?" "Yes. You mean the killer's coming here?" "Yes," he sighed. He was sure she wasn't going to get the message. He was happy to be wrong. "Why is he coming here?" "God damn it, Sue, get out of there now! He could be coming up the stairs right this second for all I know. Please, just give me an explanation. You've got my car. You owe me. I know, and I'll explain more when time is a luxury, but he thinks I'm still staying there, and he's coming for me, but if he finds you there... Just leave now! Don't pack, just go! When can I come back? I'll leave a message on your machine for you to call and check. Don't come back until I say. All right, I'll go as soon as I hang up. Good. And Sue? Yes? Of course the same goes for Michelle. Obviously. Sue? I can't leave if you don't let me off the phone. I'm sure you're mad at me, but please trust me. I'll be back as soon as I can. I'm not mad. I'm just worried. Don't be. I know what I'm doing. I've got to go, and so do you. I'm going now. Good. Just don't come back until I say. Bye. Rob, be care... The phone crackled loudly for a moment before the dial tone came. She hung it up, grabbed her work clothes, threw a few necessities into her backpack, and left. Rob hung up quickly before his feelings got a hold of him. He wanted to tell her so much more, but the less she knew, the less concerned and safer she would be. He was on the payphone at the edge of the parking lot. It was someone's bright idea to put the phone as close to the freeway as possible. Luckily for him, there had been an emergency call box only 100 yards away from where the car had died, and he had been patched through, by the operator, to the closest garage and repair shop. He crossed the small parking lot and approached the bursting, whirring noises coming from the mechanic's workshop. A welding mask covered Tony's face. Sparks flew all around him, and they had a moment to bounce on the ground before dying out. "Excuse me," Rob said. Tony, presumably the owner of Tony's Garage and Gas, did not seem to hear him. Rob cleared his throat and repeated himself louder. Tony did not notice. "Hey!" Rob yelled. Tony turned towards him. The shower of sparks faded away. He flipped his mask up into the visor mode and turned down the knob on the side of his torch. The blue flame withered away. "Son, I already told you that I was going to be a while," he said as he removed his large black rubber gloves. "I know, I'm sorry, but I've already been waiting for almost 2 hours. Can you at least pull the car into the garage or something?" he asked desperately. "I've got 2 more cars to finish up before I can get to yours. This lady's car here," he motioned to the vehicle he had just been working on, "has been waiting 2 days already, and she's coming in this afternoon to pick it up. I've got to get it done." "Well, what about the other guy?" Rob motioned at the man inside the convenience store section who was watching morning cartoons behind the counter with his feet up. He had been the person to arrive and rescue Rob and Sue's dead car from the side of the freeway. "Roy?" "Yeah, Roy. Can't he get started on it?" "Roy's just the tow truck driver occasionally. Mostly he's the cashier. He ain't a mechanic." Tony chuckled and said, "You don't want to let Roy anywhere near the underside of your hood. You probably know more about a car's workings than he does." Rob had already demonstrated his ignorance when he was told that the radiator was busted and some hoses needed to be replaced, and that he needed a new solenoid as well. He had seen Tony smirk when he asked what a solenoid was. "Please, son," Tony said. "Go on in the store there. Pull up a chair and help yourself to some coffee and a donut. Tell Roy it's fine with me. Watch some TV or read a magazine for a while. I'll get to your car as soon as I can." Rob looked like he was about to cry with frustration and said, "Please, I'm in a real hurry. It's an emergency. I'll pay you more if you can get started sooner." "Now, it's not about that," Tony replied as he brushed a greasy hand through his salt and pepper hair. "That wouldn't be fair to the folks who are expecting their cars and have been waiting longer." Renting a car was not an option for Rob. After paying the mechanic, not only would he probably not be able to afford it, but he would be turning 23 in a couple of months, and therefore had just over 2 years before he was even old enough to rent one. He had made it through the age at which he could be drafted for his country, and then a few years later had made it through the age where he could drink, but he still had to jump through that hurdle of car renting age when he got to it, if he got to it. "I know, but please," Rob begged. He looked directly into the man's gray eyes. "It's my girlfriend, actually my fiancée. I can't afford a ring yet. She's pregnant. She was due last week, and when I talked to her last night, she was going into contractions. She begged me to be there. She doesn't have anybody else, no family. Please, sir, I don't want to miss the birth of my son." Tony studied Rob's face for a moment. Rob suspected that he didn't entirely believe him, but the sense of urgency that he was projecting was very genuine. Tony sighed through his nostrils and said, Tell you what, I'll have Roy call that lady and tell her it will be one more day. Rob was flushed with relief. Oh, thank you, thank you. Tony looked delightfully embarrassed and said, Yeah, well, the lady's real snooty anyway. She just has me doing body work that don't really need to be done. I reckon she shouldn't be back on the road at all, what with all the dings and scrapes she's got all over. He leaned into Rob secretively and said more quietly, I think she had quite a bit of body work done on herself as well. He gave out a wheezing laugh. Rob smiled politely. How much do you think it'll be? He asked. Tony got serious and straightened up. Well, I can patch up your radiator and replace your hoses easily enough. Your solenoid I would have to send out for. You can pick yourself up one at any auto parts store even quicker. They'll replace it for you, I imagine. Your car will run okay, but I wouldn't count on it to continue to start up without a new one. Don't want her dying on you again. I say the whole thing will run you about $60. Rob was pleasantly shocked. He thought it would be at least $100 and would probably end up being more like $500. Now that's just for your radiator and the hoses. You still got to take care of the solenoid yourself. I understand. Thank you. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a 20. Here, please take this as a tip. He was also giving it to him as incentive to really go ahead and get started. That's not necessary. Can't have you not there to hold your wife's or girlfriend's fiancé, Rob corrected. Right. You should be there to hold her hand. I'd like to be. Mind you, she's liable to crush it to pieces. Fair warning. Tony chuckled. Rob chuckled half-heartedly back, and then went to join Roy in the store. He didn't take Tony up on the donut, but he had 2 large cups of coffee. He watched part of an incoherent anime show, and then a half-hour Heathcliff cartoon. I don't really like these shows. It's just the only channel that gets decent reception, Roy said unconvincingly. He was a simple man in his mid-30s, and his thick glasses were held together with Scotch tape. His eyes only left the set during the commercials. It's fine, Rob said. Roy smiled and nodded, happy not to change the channel. After Heathcliff was over, he said to Rob, Looks like your car's ready. Rob saw Tony driving Sue's car back out into the lot. He ran up to it as Tony was parking it. I was just about to honk for you, Tony said. He got out of the car. She's running fine now. Just watch out for any leaks. Check the coolant level in a while. You know where to put the coolant in? Rob smiled. I know the basics. Tony nodded. Good. Just don't neglect that solenoid. A car only runs good if you can keep it running. I won't forget. Thank you. He handed Tony $60 in cash. Wish you would let me give you something extra. Nah, spend it on your kid. All right. They shook hands and Rob got in the still-running car. He put it in drive. Just before he pulled away, Tony said, Hope you get there in time. Me too, Rob replied.